Hello, Dr. Hashmi here. I'm just a psychiatrist. This video is about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. This is the first video in a series of a number of videos when I'm going to take you through the lifespan of an individual who has ADHD. Hence, it is called ADHD Throughout Life. I have been learning about this condition since August 1999 when I first attended a training program whilst I was at the World Congress in Psychiatry in Hamburg. This video is about preschool years. What I aim to talk about is how you can start thinking about ADHD in your child even during the preschool years. And I'm going to tell you the differences between a boy and a girl. This disorder is largely missed amongst girls, and boys are generally diagnosed far more quicker. My conversation is based on my experience of working with individuals with this disorder over the last number of years. Now, if you look at ADHD baby and a toddler before the school years, you will see few signs and symptoms at the start, very start. These signs may well be inconclusive and might not be the part of the diagnostic categories. Hence, preschool years are the most difficult part of this condition, but essential in providing the information and the history of early years development to a clinician. In my opinion, sleep is something which is always an issue. I have come across many individuals with ADHD, and I have spent hours and hours with their parents obtaining developmental histories. What I have noticed and understood that individuals who later received the diagnosis of the condition had difficulties in settling down at night, even during the very early months of their life. Children are born with this condition. There are plenty of research studies out there to substantiate that the sleep-wake cycle and the system in our brain which makes us to sleep at certain hours in a day and night cycle, in babies, it is hard for them to settle down at night. And if they do get settled down, the sleep cycle is very limited. Let's say an average baby would sleep 12 hours, 14 hours in a day, maybe more. Because very small babies, they tend to sleep and have their milk in between. And a lot of times you see them having their milk and sleeping as well. What you see in ADHD babies is they are more awake than sleep. So if sleep is an issue, that is a sign of significance. Then, when they grow up a bit, you will see them a bit overactive. All children are overactive. All babies, preschool children are overactive. They are hyperactive. That's normal. That is expected. As we grow up, hyperactivity reduces. But preschool children, they are always running around in the house. They are always doing something. The difference in ADHD children and toddlers is you will feel they are a bit more hyperactive. They don't even settle down when their favorite program on the television is on. They tend to find hard to focus on anything. At 2 years old, you will see moving from one thing to another. We don't expect children of this age to complete a task, but we expect some degree of limited task completion. In ADHD, you will really find hard to have your child contained for any task completion. They will hold something, throw it, and move on. Children like to throw things. They like to feel, touch. The sensory element is always very high in children, especially preschool children. But let's say at 2 years old, you give them a piece of paper and a pen. You will see those children mostly, they're sitting there doodling on it, just lines or drawing lines or doing things which are meaningless for an adult, but for a child, that is the task. You will see that they will spend maybe few minutes doing that. And that is enough for a 2 years old. But if you see them that they are unable to even do anything, like just a line and moved on to another task, or gone into the room and moving from one end to another, touching or throwing things quite excessively, that can be seen as a bit of hyperactivity. The dividing line is very narrow and sharp, and I've said that these signs are not entirely diagnostic at this age, but essential to keep in mind and essential to inform a clinician when your child will go for a formal assessment at some stage in the future. My experience is that ADHD children, toddlers, babies, walk quickly than other children. Their hyperactivity makes them to mobilize quicker. So even when you expect, say, a baby would start taking some steps around the time of 12 months, 10, 12 months, these babies you will see far more quicker. Not significantly different, but far more quicker. It is very likely that they start talking earlier than other children as well. Now, then, after 2 years, you start looking around taking your toddler to a nursery. There will be no problems in a toddler settling down in the nursery apart from the usual first few weeks when they like a parent to be around. But when they are in nursery, you will see them more active on the physical play. If they pick a toy, they might not play with the toy and move on to another toy. You will see them more sporty from the start, kicking balls, more interested in throwing and kicking objects as compared to others. Unable to probably watch a cartoon maybe of few minutes duration, they will look at the screen and turn their attention to something else. The other thing I have noticed is that they are usually quite hungry children, toddlers, but always quite thin. And you always think about that my boy and a girl is eating good. Why not putting on weight? And it is usually because they're consuming energy a lot as well. Now, at this stage, it is extremely difficult to see the difference between boys and a girl about developing. The incidence amongst boys is 4 times greater than girls. Hence, they are diagnosed more quickly and there is more information research available on boys. It does not mean that we have to rely on this ratio, because for many years psychiatry did not acknowledge the disorder. When I first attended my training in August 1999, when I returned to my training program in Britain, I recall the consultant I spoke to about the condition and discussed what I learned. I was surprised that most of my seniors saw it as an American gimmick for insurance purposes. It took a long time for British psychiatry to realize that this condition exists. In my opinion, the ratio of 4 boys and a girl is incorrect. If we would have known about the condition and the way it presents in girls, which I'm going to talk about in primary school years video, we might see that this gap probably doesn't exist. There's a strong genetic contribution to this disorder, and most good services which specializes in carrying out assessments of ADHD invite parents or any other close relative of interest for screening to work out whether there is an element of attention deficit. Hence, if your child, a toddler in preschool years, giving you an impression, a feeling of hyperactivity, making you tired more than what you expect, the physical activity is quicker than the peers, like you take it to swimming group, you take it to music group, you take it to different toddlers activities, and you see the physical activity slightly more. All the developmental signs of physical activity, like walking, talking, be slightly more quicker. And at birth, it took a long time to settle down. Sleep had always been an issue. Suspect that you might require an assessment of ADHD in later years, but don't take these signs as diagnostic. Don't lose your sleep on it. These are only relevant indicators to a clinician when you are invited to give developmental history at some stage in the future. My second video will cover the nursery and preschool year, nursery and primary school years. Thank you. Two-layered us. We have two layers. The outer layer is for the world, the material world, physical world, the world we live in, see and experience. Then we have our inner layer. Inner layer is spiritual. It's for the spiritual world. Outer layer requires worldly pleasures. Inner layer requires acts of kindness, good deeds. Good deeds. We cannot spend a peaceful, comfortable and contented life only by feeding our outer layer. We have to feed our spiritual layer by acts of kindness.